The backstage area smelled like old wood and nervous sweat. Mia clutched her violin case tighter, feeling the rough edges of the worn leather against her palms. She'd wrapped duct tape around one corner last week, when it started coming apart. Now she wished she'd covered it with something prettier. Around her, the other musicians moved with a confidence she couldn't fake. Designer suits. Expensive dresses. Instrument cases that probably cost more than her mom's car. She counted at least 3 violins being carefully removed from cases lined with velvet. Hers had newspaper. She found a corner and sat down on the floor, making herself small. The Lincoln Center was nothing like the community center back home where she usually practiced. Everything here gleamed. Even the chairs looked too fancy to sit on. Is this your first real competition? Mia looked up. A girl about her age stood there, holding a violin bow that caught the light like it was made of glass. Everything about her screamed money. The perfect posture. The way she smiled without showing too much emotion. Yeah, Mia said quietly. Thought so. You look terrified. The girl laughed. Not meanly exactly, but not kindly either. Good luck out there. You'll need it. She walked away before Mia could respond. That's when Mia noticed him. He stood across the room like he owned the place. Tall, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair swept back perfectly. While everyone else seemed at least a little nervous, he looked bored. He was talking to an older woman who kept nodding and writing things down. A journalist, probably. His violin case sat open beside him, and even from where she sat, Mia could see it was special. The wood glowed like honey in sunlight. A real Stradivarius, she'd bet anything. She'd only seen one once in a museum behind thick glass. Someone called out, "Victor." 5 minutes. So that was Victor Petrov. She'd heard his name thrown around all day. 2-time European champion, performed with the London Symphony at 22. There were posters of him in her music teacher's classroom back home. Victor glanced around the room, his eyes sliding over the other competitors like they were furniture. When his gaze landed on Mia, sitting on the floor in her thrift store dress with her taped-up case, something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe, or pity. He leaned over to his accompanist, a thin man with wired glasses, and whispered something. They both looked her way and smiled. Not friendly smiles. Mia's cheeks burned. She looked down at her hands. Her nails were cut short, no polish. There was still dirt under one thumbnail from helping her dad in the garden yesterday. She'd scrubbed and scrubbed. But it wouldn't come out completely. The preliminary round had been harder than she'd expected. She'd practiced the piece 1,000 times in her bedroom. In the school music room, after everyone left, even in the bathroom where the acoustics made her sound better. But standing on that stage this morning, under lights so bright they made her dizzy, her fingers had felt thick and clumsy. She'd made it through. Barely. The judges had given her polite nods. The kind you give someone when you're trying to be encouraging, but don't expect much. 62 people had started the competition. 20 made it to the finals. She was number 19 on the list. Victor had played 4th. She'd watched from the audience, and honestly, it had been devastating. Perfect technique. Every note exactly where it should be. The kind of playing that makes you want to quit and take up something easier, like brain surgery. The applause had been huge. Not the wild, screaming kind, but the serious, respectful kind that classical music people do. Dignified, impressed. When Mia had played, the applause had been ... polite, sympathetic. Even all finalists, please gather for the briefing. Everyone started moving toward the main rehearsal room. Mia grabbed her case and followed, staying toward the back of the group. The competition director, a stern woman with silver hair, stood at the front with a clipboard. "Congratulations on making it to the finals," she said, not sounding particularly congratulatory. "Tomorrow's round will separate the truly exceptional from the merely competent." Mia swallowed hard. You'll each perform to pieces. First, a classical selection of your choice. Second, your own interpretation or original composition. We want to see not just technical skill, but artistry. Soul. Something that makes us feel. Victor was leaning against the wall, arms crossed. He looked like he'd heard this speech 100 times before. Performance order has been randomly selected. The director started reading names. Victor would go third. Mia would go last. She didn't know if that was good or bad. Going last meant everyone would be tired, ready to go home. But it also meant she could watch everyone else first, maybe learn something. After the briefing, people scattered. Some went to practice rooms. Others left to get dinner at restaurants Mia couldn't afford. She found an empty hallway and sat against the wall. Opening her case, her violin looked sad next to all those expensive instruments. The varnish was worn in spots. One of the tuning pegs stuck sometimes. But when she lifted it to her shoulder, it felt like home. She'd gotten it 4 years ago from Mr. Chen, the retired music teacher who lived in the trailer park where her family had stayed that summer. Her parents worked the fields, picking whatever was in season. She'd been 15, bored and lonely. When she'd heard music coming from Mr. Chen's trailer, he'd taught her for free that whole summer. Said she had something special, something you couldn't teach. When they had to move on to the next harvest, he'd given her the violin. Someone gave this to me when I was young, he'd said. Now I'm passing it on. Play it well. Play it true, she taught herself after that, mostly. YouTube videos on her phone. Free sheet music from the library. Whatever she could find. Her high school had a music program, barely, and the teacher there had helped when she could. But mostly, Mia had learned by playing. Hours and hours until her fingers bled, until her shoulder ached, until the notes finally sounded right. She rosined her bow now, the familiar motion calming her nerves. Tomorrow was the final round. Tomorrow, she'd be on that stage with people like Victor. People who'd had private tutors since they were 5. People whose parents could afford summer programs in Vienna and master classes in New York. What was she even doing here? The bus ride had taken 14 hours. Her mom had packed sandwiches and cookies, enough for 3 days. Her dad had slipped her $40, even though she knew they needed it for bills. For emergencies, he'd said. Or if you want to celebrate after you win. They believed in her so much it hurt. Down the hall, she could hear Victor practicing. Even his warm-up exercises sounded perfect, clean, professional, like music that belonged in a place. Like this, Mia put her violin away and closed the case gently. Tomorrow, she'd play her absolute best. She'd play the Vivaldi piece she'd chosen, the one she'd practiced until she could play it in her sleep, and then, for her second piece, she'd play something she'd written herself, something risky, something real. It probably wouldn't be enough. Victor would probably win. But at least she'd know she'd tried. At least she could go home and tell her parents she'd given it everything. She just hoped she wouldn't embarrass herself too badly. The hallway lights flickered once, then steadied. Somewhere in the building, someone was playing piano. The notes drifted through the air, melancholy and beautiful. Mia closed her eyes and listened, trying to quiet the voice in her head that kept whispering she didn't belong here. Tomorrow would come soon enough. Mia woke up at 5 in the morning, her heart already racing. She'd barely slept. The hotel room was the cheapest she could find, 40 minutes away by subway. The heater clanked and rattled all night. The people next door had their TV on until 2. She sat up in the dark and reached for her phone. 3 missed calls from her mom. She must have silenced it without realizing. Mia, are you awake? Her mom picked up on the first ring. Yeah, Mom. I'm okay. I couldn't sleep. Your father neither. He's right here. You want to talk to him? Put her on speaker, Maria. Her dad's voice came through, thick with exhaustion. He'd probably just gotten home from his night shift at the warehouse. How are you feeling, kiddo? He asked. Terrified, Mia admitted. Dad, these people are so good. You should see them. They've been training for this their whole lives. So have you, he said firmly. Every day after school, every weekend. Don't you remember? We'd hear you playing through the walls until midnight sometimes. That's different. They had real teachers. Real training. I learned from videos on my phone. Her mom made a sound, half laugh, half something else. And that makes you stronger, not weaker. You wanted it so bad you found a way. That's not nothing, Mia. They talked for a few more minutes, until Mia could hear the sunrise in her mom's voice. The way it got softer when she was about to cry. They said goodbye quickly, before either of them broke. Mia showered in the tiny bathroom where the water went from freezing to scalding with no in-between. She put on her black dress, the one she'd worn to her grandmother's funeral 2 years ago. It was the only formal thing she owned. The subway was packed with morning commuters. Nobody looked at her twice. Just another person going somewhere. Probably somewhere more important than a music competition she had no business being in. She got to Lincoln Center 2 hours early. Security let her in through the performer's entrance, checking her badge twice. The hallways were quiet, empty. She found a practice room and locked herself inside. Her hands were shaking when she took out her violin. She played scales first, trying to warm up her fingers. Then she started on the Vivaldi piece, Winter, from the Four Seasons. She'd chosen it because it reminded her of something, though she couldn't quite say what. Maybe because winter was hard, but beautiful. Maybe because it always ended with spring. She was halfway through when someone knocked on the door. Occupied. She called out. The door opened anyway. Victor stood there, his expensive violin case in one hand. "This is my practice room," he said. Not rudely, exactly. Just stating a fact. Mia looked at the schedule taped to the wall. Room for B, 9 to 10 a.m. Victor Petrov. She checked her phone. 9:45. She'd lost track of time. "Sorry, I didn't realize." "It's fine." He walked in, setting his case down on the table. "You're the girl from yesterday. The one sitting on the floor?" He'd crept up Mia's neck. "Yeah, that was me." He opened his case, revealing that beautiful instrument. In the morning light coming through the small window, it looked even more incredible. The wood seemed to glow from within. "How long have you been playing?" he asked, not looking at her. "For years." That made him look up. "For years? And you made it to the finals?" She couldn't tell if he was impressed or skeptical. Maybe both. "I practice a lot," she said quietly, clearly. Lifted his violin, checking the tuning. "What are you playing today?" "Vivaldi, Winter, and then ... She hesitated. "Something I wrote." Now he definitely looked skeptical. "An original composition? That's ambitious. The rules said we could." "The rules say a lot of things." He drew his bow across the strings, a single perfect note that hung in the air. "Most people don't risk it. Original work is hard to judge. Easy to criticize? I know. So why do it?" Mia thought about that. About the piece she'd written in her bedroom, late at night when everyone else was asleep. About how it had poured out of her, something she couldn't quite explain or control. "'Cause it's true," she said finally. Victor studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he turned back to his violin. "Well, good luck with that." It was clearly a dismissal. Mia packed up her violin quickly and left. The morning crawled by. More competitors arrived. The energy backstage built like pressure in a kettle. Everyone had their routines. Some people meditated. Others paced. One guy did jumping jacks in the hallway until someone told him to stop. At 11, they gathered for a final briefing. The competition director explained the schedule again. Each performer would have exactly 15 minutes. To pieces. No more, no less. "The judges are looking for technical excellence, yes," she said. "But they're also looking for heart. For something that moves them. Don't just play the notes. Tell us a story." It's easy for her to say, Mia thought. The finals started at 1 p.m. The auditorium was packed. Real music critics sat in the front rows, notebooks open. Talent scouts. Recording executives. People who could change your life with a single phone call. The first performer was good. Really good. A guy from South Korea who played Beethoven like he'd written it himself. The applause was strong. The second performer was better. A woman from Germany who made her violin sing in ways that didn't seem physically possible. Then Victor walked on stage. Mia watched from the wings, her stomach in knots. He looked completely at ease up there, like he'd been born on stages like this. He announced his piece, Paganini's Caprice No. 24. One of the hardest violin pieces ever written. He played it perfectly. Not almost perfectly, actually perfectly. Every note crisp and clear. every technique flawless. The difficult parts that made other violinists sweat looked easy when he did them. The audience loved it. The applause went on and on. People were nodding, smiling. In the front row, one of the judges was writing furiously, probably running out of ways to say, "Excellent." Backstage afterward, Victor was surrounded by people. Congratulations, handshakes. Someone from a record label was giving him a business card. A journalist cornered him, the same woman from yesterday. Mia was close enough to hear. "How does it feel to essentially have this wrapped up?" the journalist asked. Victor smiled modestly. "Well, there are still other performers. Come on. Between us, you've got this, right?" He glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Not low enough. I mean, the competition is essentially over, though I suppose we have to let everyone else have their moment." The journalist laughed. "And what about original compositions? Any concerns about competitors taking creative risks?" "Honestly, it usually backfires. Original work at this level is hard to pull off. Most people should stick to the classics." Mia turned away before she could hear more. Her hands were trembling again, but this time it wasn't just nerves. It was something else. Anger, maybe. Or determination. She found a quiet corner and took out her phone. Her mom had sent a text. "We're watching the live stream at your aunt's house. Everyone's here. We love you no matter what." Mia opened her violin case. She had 2 hours before her turn. 2 hours to decide if she was really going to do this. Play it safe with just the Vivaldi, or risk everything on a piece she'd written herself. A piece about fields at dawn. About her grandmother's hands. About waking up at 4 a.m. to work before school. About hoping for something better while being grateful for what you had. About being invisible to people like Victor, but mattering to people who actually mattered. She picked up her violin and started playing through it, quietly. The melody came easy now, like breathing. She'd played it so many times it lived in her fingers. Other performers came and went. Some did well. Some cracked under pressure. The afternoon wore on. Finally, someone called her name. "Mia Chen, you're next." She stood up, her legs unsteady. This was it. Last performer of the day. Everyone was tired. The judges had heard hours of music. Victor's performance had set an impossible standard. She could play it safe. Or she could play it true. In the end, there was really only one choice. Mia picked up her violin and walked toward the stage. The walk from backstage to the center of that massive stage felt like miles. Mia's footsteps echoed in the quiet auditorium. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her. The lights were so bright she couldn't see past the first few rows. Her simple black dress suddenly felt too plain, too cheap. She saw a woman in the third row whisper something to the man beside her. Were they talking about her? About how young she looked? How out of place? The piano accompanist gave her a kind smile. At least someone looked friendly. Mia positioned herself at the center mark on the floor. She could see the judges now. 5 of them, sitting at a long table. Stern faces. Tired faces. They'd been here all day. She lifted her violin to her shoulder. The weight of it, familiar and comforting. She'd held this instrument through so many moments. Happy ones. Sad ones. Lonely ones. "Whenever you're ready," the head judge said. Her voice echoed through the sound system. Mia's throat was dry. She was supposed to announce her pieces. She opened her mouth, but her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "I'll be playing Winter from Vivaldi's Four Seasons." And then an original composition called Fields at Dawn. She heard it then. A quiet murmur from the audience. Whispers. Original composition. Someone coughed. It sounded like skepticism. In the wings, she knew Victor was watching. Probably with that same amused look from yesterday. Probably thinking about what he'd told that journalist. Most people should stick to the classics. Her bow touched the strings. The first notes came out shaky. Her hand was trembling slightly, and she knew everyone could hear it. This was the worst possible start. She closed her eyes for a second, trying to steady herself. Focus. Just focus. She started again, from the top. Better this time. The opening of winter was meant to sound cold, sharp, like wind cutting through bare trees. She could do this. She'd played it 1,000 times. For the first minute, she hit all the notes correctly. Her technique was solid, even if it wasn't flashy. The piece moved along predictably. Safe, competent in the audience. She saw one judge glance at his watch, and something inside Mia shifted. She thought about her mom, scrubbing floors in office buildings at night, her dad loading boxes at the warehouse, his back aching, her grandmother who'd crossed a border with nothing, looking for something better. All the people who'd worked so hard so she could stand on this stage, they hadn't worked that hard for her to play it safe. Mia opened her eyes and let herself feel the music differently. Winter wasn't just about cold and ice. It was about surviving, about enduring, about making it through the hardest season and knowing spring was coming. Her playing changed. The notes were the same, but something in how she played them shifted. She wasn't just executing technique anymore. She was telling a story. Her bow dug deeper into the strings. Her vibrato became more intense, more alive. She swayed slightly, moving with the music instead of standing rigid. In one particularly difficult passage, her fingers flew across the fingerboard. Not as cleanly as Victor would have played it, but with more feeling. More urgency. The audience leaned forward. Just slightly, but she felt it. The energy in the room changed. One of the judges, an older woman with white hair, set down her pen. Just watching now. Just listening. Mia poured everything into the final section. The part where winter begins to break, where you can feel spring underneath the ice, fighting to get through. Her bow arm ached with the effort, but she didn't care. The last note rang out clear and true. The applause was warm. Not overwhelming, but genuine. Better than polite. She saw a few people nodding appreciatively, but she wasn't done. This next part, this was the risk. This was where she could crash and burn in front of everyone. She lowered her violin for a moment, catching her breath. The auditorium went quiet again, waiting. My second piece, she said, her voice stronger now, is something I wrote myself. It's called Fields at Dawn. More murmurs. She saw Victor in the wings, arms crossed, watching with that unreadable expression. One of the judges leaned over to whisper to another. Their faces said they'd heard plenty of mediocre original compositions before. They weren't expecting much. Mia raised her violin again. The first notes were soft, almost tentative, like the first hint of light before sunrise, when everything is still gray and uncertain. She played so quietly that people in the back rows had to strain to hear. This was the sound of waking up at 4 a.m, of stepping outside while stars were still visible, of cold air and dew on grass, and the world holding its breath before the day began. Slowly, the melody grew. She added layers of sound, techniques she'd taught herself from videos, pizzicato notes that sounded like water dripping, double stops that created harmony with herself. She thought about the fields where her parents had worked, row after row of crops stretching to the horizon. The rhythm of labor, the songs people hummed to pass the time. Her grandmother's voice singing in Spanish while her hands moved automatically. Picking and sorting, the music built. It wasn't pretty in the classical sense. It was real. Sometimes the bow scratched against the strings, creating a harsh sound that was intentional. That was the struggle. The difficulty. The pain of work that breaks your body. But then the melody would soar again. That was the hope. The reason you kept going? The belief that this hard life was building towards something better. Victor had stopped looking amused. His expression was different now, focused, intent. The white-haired judge had tears in her eyes. Mia played faster now, her fingers moving in patterns she'd invented herself. This was the sunrise, full and bright. This was her grandmother laughing, her mother singing while cooking, her father teaching her to be brave. This was every scholarship application she'd filled out, every rejection letter. Every time someone had looked at her and seen nothing special, every time she'd proven them wrong, her bow arm was shaking with effort. Sweat ran down her temple. She didn't care. The music reached its peak. a crescendo that seemed impossible from one person and one violin. She played with everything she had, every muscle, every breath, every hope and dream and fear, and then she brought it down, softer and softer. Like the sun rising higher makes the world quiet, peaceful, like after all the struggle, there's a moment of grace, a moment where you stand in a field at dawn and think, I made it. I survived. I'm still here. The final notes were barely whispers. She played so softly that the entire auditorium held its breath. Leaning in to catch every sound, the last note faded into nothing. Silence, complete and total silence. Mia stood there, her bow still touching the strings, not sure if she should move. Not sure if she'd just humiliated herself or done something right. 1 second past 2.3, the silence stretched, so long it hurt. Then the white-haired judge stood up. Tears were streaming down her face openly now. She brought her hands together. The sound of her clapping was like a gunshot in that silent room. Then another person stood. Then another. The entire front row rose to their feet. The applause started like a wave and crashed over everything. People weren't just clapping. They were on their feet. Some were crying. Others were shaking their heads in disbelief. The standing ovation grew louder, louder. Someone in the balcony shouted brava. Mia stood frozen, overwhelmed. She'd never experienced anything like this. The applause went on and on. 30 seconds. A minute. 2 minutes. She finally lowered her violin, her arm trembling. She didn't know whether to bow or run off stage or cry. The white-haired judge was still standing, still clapping, tears still falling. In the wings, Victor stood perfectly still. His face had gone pale. He looked like someone had just rewritten everything he thought he knew about music. The applause continued. 3 minutes now. People in the back were whistling. The whole auditorium was on its feet. Finally, Mia managed a small bow. Then another. The crowd loved it, cheering louder. When she finally walked off stage, her legs barely worked. She was shaking all over. Adrenaline and exhaustion and disbelief all mixed together. She made it into the wings and leaned against the wall. Trying to breathe, that's when Victor approached her. He stopped a few feet away. And for a long moment, he just looked at her. Really looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. That was ... He started, then stopped. Tried again. I've never heard anything like that. His voice was quiet, genuine. The arrogance from before was completely gone. Where did you learn to play like that? He asked. Mia was still catching her breath, still trying to process what had just happened. I didn't learn it, she said finally. I just lived it. Victor nodded slowly, like he was beginning to understand something. Something important. The judges disappeared into a small room to deliberate. Everyone knew this was usually the longest part. Sometimes they took an hour. Sometimes 2. Mia found a chair backstage and collapsed into it. Her whole body felt like it was vibrating. She couldn't tell if she wanted to laugh, or cry, or sleep for a week. Other competitors came up to her. People who'd barely looked at her before. They shook her hand, said things like incredible and moving, and I've never seen anything like that. The girl from yesterday, the one who'd told her she looked terrified, stopped in front of her. I was wrong, she said simply. That was amazing. Mia didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. Victor hadn't come over. He stood by himself near the water cooler, staring at nothing. His accompanist tried to talk to him twice, but he waved the man away. He looked like someone deep in thought, working through a difficult problem. Mia pulled out her phone. 73 text messages. She scrolled through them, her eyes blurring with tears. Her mom, MIJA. We're screaming. The whole family is screaming. Her dad, I'm crying in front of everyone, and I don't even care. That's my daughter, her aunt. You made your grandmother proud today. I know she was watching. Messages from people she hadn't talked to in years. Her old high school music teacher, Mr. Chen from the trailer park. People from her hometown who'd somehow found the live stream. She was trying to respond when someone sat down next to her. Victor, he had 2 bottles of water. He handed her one without saying anything. "Thanks," Mia said quietly. They sat in silence for a moment. In the main auditorium, they could hear the crowd talking, waiting for the results. "I've been playing violin since I was 5, Victor said suddenly. "Private tutors. Conservatory training. Summer programs in Europe. The best teachers money could buy." Mia didn't know why he was telling her this. "And I'm good. I know I'm good. Technically perfect, people say." He turned the water bottle in his hands. "But today, standing in those wings, watching you play, I realized something." He looked at her directly. "I've never made anyone cry with my music. Not once. Not ever." Mia remembered the white-haired judge, tears streaming down her face. "That judge," Victor continued, "she was crying before you even finished. And it wasn't because your technique was perfect. It wasn't because you hit every note right." "I didn't hit every note right," Mia admitted. "Exactly." He smiled, but it wasn't mean. It was almost sad. "I did. I hit every single note perfectly. And no one cried." Mia didn't know what to say to that. "Where did it come from?" Victor asked. "That piece you wrote?" "That feeling," so Mia told him. About the fields? About her parents working before sunrise? About learning violin from a retired teacher in a trailer? About practicing in bathrooms and empty classrooms because she didn't have anywhere else to go? She told him about being invisible. About people like him, people who'd had every advantage, looking right through her like she wasn't there. "I'm sorry," Victor said when she finished. And he sounded like he meant it. "For yesterday. For all of it. I was arrogant. You're honest," Mia said. "You are better than me, technically. Maybe, but technique isn't everything." He leaned back in his chair. "My father is a conductor. My mother is a concert pianist. They had my whole life planned before I could walk. And I love music, I really do. But sometimes I wonder if I know how to play it or just how to perform it." Before Mia could respond, the competition director appeared. "Everyone, please return to the auditorium. The judges have made their decision." Mia's stomach dropped. This was it. The walk back to the stage felt surreal. All the finalists lined up across the back. 20 people who'd made it this far. 20 different stories. 20 different dreams. The auditorium was packed again. People had brought friends. The balcony was standing room only. The head judge, a man in his 60s with gray hair, stepped up to the microphone. "This year's competition was exceptional," he began. "The level of talent we witnessed today was truly remarkable." Mia's hands were shaking. She clasped them together. Judging was difficult. Each performer brought something unique. But in the end, we had to make a choice. He paused. The silence was agonizing. Third place, with a cash prize of $10,000 and a scholarship to the music program of their choice. David Park from Seoul. Applause erupted. The Korean guy who'd played Beethoven walked forward, grinning. He deserved it. He'd been incredible. Second place, with a cash prize of $25,000 and a guaranteed audition with 3 major orchestras. Mia held her breath. This was it. Either she'd place second, or Victor had. Or neither of them had placed at all. Please, she thought. Please let it be something. Anything to help her family. Anything to make this real. Victor Petrov. The room exploded with applause. Victor stood still for a moment, his face unreadable. Then he walked forward and shook the judge's hand. Second place. Victor Petrov, who'd won every competition for 5 years, had come in second. Mia felt dizzy. If Victor was second and she wasn't third, and either she'd gotten first or she hadn't placed at all. The head judge waited for the applause to die down. He was smiling now, really smiling. First place was unanimous. Every single judge voted the same way. In 20 years of running this competition, I've never seen that happen. Mia couldn't breathe. Right. The winner. With a grand prize of $50,000, a full scholarship to Juilliard, and representation by the Steinway Artist Management Program. The pause felt like forever. Mia Chen, the auditorium erupted. The sound was deafening. People were on their feet again, cheering, applauding. Someone was ringing a bell. The white-haired judge was crying again. Mia stood frozen. This couldn't be real. This didn't happen to people like her. Victor turned around and started clapping. He was smiling, genuinely smiling, and nodding at her to go forward. Her legs moved automatically. She walked to the front of the stage in a daze. The head judge shook her hand. Someone put flowers in her arms. Camera flashes went off like lightning. "Your performance today reminded us why we love music," the judge said into the microphone. "You didn't just play notes. You shared your soul. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what art is truly about." More applause, more cheering. Mia looked out at the crowd and saw people wiping their eyes, saw them smiling at her like she'd given them something precious. Backstage, after the ceremony, after the photos, after the journalists asking questions, Mia finally found a quiet corner. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and called home. Her mom answered before the first ring finished. "Mom," Mia said, and then she was crying. "Mom, I won." "We know, baby. We know. We watched everything. The whole neighborhood is here. Everyone's crying. Your father can't even talk. He's crying so hard. $50,000, Mom. And Juilliard. Full scholarship." "I know, Mia. I know." Her mom was crying too now. "You did it. You really did it." "We did it," Mia corrected. "All of us. This is for all of us." After they hung up, Mia sat there for a long time, just holding her violin. Her cheap, taped-up violin that had somehow been enough. That had always been enough. Someone cleared their throat. She looked up. The white-haired judge stood there, the one who'd cried during her performance. "I'm Dr. Helen Kozlov," she said. "I conduct the Boston Symphony Orchestra." Mia stood up quickly. She knew who Dr. Kozlov was. Everyone did. She was legendary. "I want you to know something," Dr. Kozlov said. "I've been judging competitions for 30 years. I've heard thousands of performances. Technically perfect performances. Beautiful performances. Impressive performances." She paused. "But what you did today, ... that was different. You reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. Before it became about perfection and precision and impressing people, you reminded me it's about truth." "Thank you," Mia whispered. "I'd like to mentor you, if you're interested. Not to change what you do, but to help you grow. To introduce you to opportunities." Mia felt tears building again. Yes, I'd like that." Dr. Kozlov smiled. "Good. We'll talk more soon. For now, go celebrate. You've earned it." As she walked away, Victor appeared again. "Congratulations," he said. "You deserved this." "Could have won," Mia said. "You were perfect." "No." Victor shook his head. "You were perfect. Just in a different way. A better way." He held out his hand. "Friends." Mia shook it. "Friends. Somehow impossibly. Wonderfully." She meant it. 6 months later, Mia stood in a practice room at Juilliard, looking out at the New York skyline. Snow was falling gently, covering the city in white. It still didn't feel real sometimes. Her dorm room was small, but hers. She had a roommate from Japan who played cello and stayed up too late practicing. She had classes with teachers who'd performed at Carnegie Hall. She had access to a library full of sheet music she'd only dreamed about before. And she had her same old violin, the one with the tape on the corner. Someone had offered to buy her a new one. A donor, impressed by her story, wanted to give her a proper instrument, something worth thousands. But Mia had said no. This violin had gotten her here. It would take her wherever she was going next. Her phone buzzed. A text from Victor? Coffee at the usual place? I have news. They'd kept in touch, surprisingly. At first, Mia thought it would be awkward. The guy who came in second, staying friends with the girl who beat him. But Victor had been genuine about wanting to change, to learn. She texted back, 20 minutes. The coffee shop near campus was crowded with students. Mia found Victor at a corner table, 2 cups already waiting. He'd remembered her order. Plain coffee, no sugar. She still couldn't get used to spending money on fancy drinks. She said, sitting down. "What's the news?" Victor grinned. Actually grinned. She'd never seen him look this excited. "I got accepted. To the teaching program." "Wait, really? You're serious?" "Dead serious. I start in the fall. Teaching violin to kids in underserved communities, kids who can't afford private lessons." Mia felt herself smiling. "Victor, that's amazing. It's because of you, you know?" He stirred his coffee, not meeting her eyes. "After the competition, I couldn't stop thinking about what you said. About learning from life, not just from masters. About how music should mean something." He looked up. "I realized I'd been playing for the wrong reasons. For awards. For my parents. For my ego. But never for the music itself. Never to actually connect with people." "Ace? So you're giving up performing?" "Not giving up. Changing focus. I'm still doing concerts, but smaller ones. Community centers. Schools. Places where people might not usually hear classical music. I did one last month at a youth detention center. These kids who'd never touched an instrument. And I played, and then I let them try. This one kid picked up my violin, my actual Stradivarius, and I taught him 3 notes. Victor's eyes were bright. He played those 3 notes over and over, so proud of himself. And I thought, this is it. This is what it's supposed to feel like." Mia reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Your parents must be freaking out." "Well, they are. My father didn't speak to me for a month. But they're coming around. Slowly." He smiled. "Turns out disappointing your parents a little bit is sometimes the right thing to do." They talked for another hour. About classes. About music. About life. Victor told her about a girl he was seeing, a pianist who called him out when he got too serious. Mia told him about her struggles with music theory. How she was playing catch-up with students who'd had years of formal training. "You'll get there," Victor said. "You always do." When they parted ways, Mia headed back across campus. She had a lesson with Dr. Kozlov in an hour. The mentorship had been life-changing. Dr. Kozlov was demanding, but kind. She pushed Mia to grow technically while never asking her to lose that raw emotional quality that made her playing special. "Technique serves emotion," she'd said during their first lesson. Not the other way around. Never forget that. Today's lesson was in Dr. Kozlov's office, a beautiful room lined with photographs of her with famous musicians. Mia still got intimidated walking in there. "Ah, Mia. Good. Right." Dr. Kozlov looked up from her desk. "I have something to discuss with you." Mia sat down, nervous. Dr. Kozlov's serious tone could mean anything. "I'm conducting a benefit concert in April, Carnegie. All proceeds go to music education programs for low-income students." Mia nodded. She'd heard about this concert. Everyone had. "I want you to perform." The words hung in the air. Mia wasn't sure she'd heard correctly. "Carnegie Hall?" She managed. "Carnegie Hall. Solo performance. 15 minutes? You can play whatever you want." Dr. Kozlov smiled. "I think you should play Fields at Dawn, the piece from the competition." "I'm just a student. First year. There are so many better. Stop." Dr. Kozlov held up her hand. "This is what you're going to have to work on, Mia. Believing you belong in the rooms you're in. You earned your place here. You earned this opportunity. Will you do it?" Mia thought about the little girl who'd learned violin in a trailer park, the teenager practicing in bathroom stalls, the young woman who'd walked onto that competition stage 6 months ago, terrified and invisible. "Yes," she said. "I'll do it." The months leading up to the concert were intense. Mia practiced until her fingers bled. She worked with Dr. Kozlov on stage presence, on controlling her nerves, on trusting herself. She also started something new. A fundraiser. With part of her competition prize money, she'd started a scholarship fund. Small. Just enough to buy instruments for kids who couldn't afford them. She partnered with Victor's teaching program. Together, it already helped 20 students. One of them was a 10-year-old named Leo from the Bronx. He reminded Mia of herself, hungry to learn. talented but untrained. She gave him her practice schedule before school, after school, weekends. His mom worked 2 jobs but found time to drive him to lessons. The night before Carnegie Hall, Mia couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about everyone who'd be in that audience. Critics, donors, famous musicians. What if she froze? What if she disappointed everyone? Her phone rang at 2 in the morning. Her mom? "I knew you'd be awake," her mom said. "How?" "Because I know you." "You're scared, terrified," Mia admitted. "Good. That means it matters. But remember, Mia, you've already done the hard part. You already proved you belong. Tomorrow is just sharing what you have, and what you have is special." They talked until Mia felt calm again, until she remembered why she played music in the first place. Carnegie Hall was everything Mia had imagined and more. The dressing room, the hallways lined with photographs of legends, the stage itself, enormous and beautiful. She stood in the wings, waiting for her introduction. Dr. Kozlov was conducting tonight. Before walking out, she stopped and squeezed Mia's shoulder. "Just like before," she whispered. "Play it true." The introduction came. Mia walked out to applause. The house lights were down, but she could sense the crowd. Huge, intimidating. She saw her parents in the 3rd row. Her dad in a suit he'd bought special for tonight. Her mom in her best dress. They were holding hands, already crying. Behind them, she spotted Victor. He gave her a thumbs up. In the back, she saw Leo with his mom. The kid was bouncing with excitement. Mia lifted her violin. Her taped, scratched, beautiful violin. She thought about everything that had led to this moment. All the struggles, all the doubts, all the people who'd helped her along the way, and then she played. She played for her grandmother, who'd crossed borders looking for a better life. For her parents who'd worked their fingers raw so she could have chances they never had. For Mr. Chen, who had given her this violin and told her to play it true. She played for every kid like her. Every invisible person who'd been told they didn't belong in places like this. Every person who'd been underestimated. The music soared through Carnegie Hall, Fields at Dawn. The piece she'd written in her bedroom. Now filling one of the most famous concert halls in the world, she played the ending softly, bringing it down to almost nothing. That moment of grace, that sunrise moment, the final note faded. Silence, then the room exploded. Standing ovation, instant, overwhelming. Dr. Kozlov was crying again. Victor was on his feet, applauding so hard his hands must have hurt. Leo was jumping up and down, but Mia looked at her parents. Her dad had his arm around her mom. They were both sobbing, smiling, so proud they couldn't contain it. Mia bowed. Once, twice, 3 times, when she finally walked off stage. Dr. Kozlov was there. "That," she said, "is why we never give up on our dreams." That right there. Later at the reception, a journalist found Mia. "How does it feel," she asked, "to go from complete unknown to performing at Carnegie Hall in 6 months?" Mia thought about that. About the journey. About everything she'd learned, honestly. She said, "I don't feel that different. I'm still the same person who learned violin from YouTube videos. Still the same girl with the taped-up violin. Success didn't change who I am. It just gave me a bigger platform to be myself." The journalist smiled. "That's beautiful. The real story isn't me," Mia continued. "It's every kid like Leo out there. Every person who has talent but no opportunity. That's who I'm playing for now. That's what matters." That night, back in her dorm, Mia set her violin carefully in its case. Tomorrow she had classes. Theory, homework, a lesson on advanced techniques. But tonight, she let herself feel it. The impossible dream that had somehow come true. Not because she was the most talented or the most trained, but because she'd been brave enough to be herself, to play her truth. Her phone buzzed. A text from Victor. He killed it tonight. "Drinks next week to celebrate?" And one from her mom. "We love you so much. Never forget where you came from, but never let it limit where you're going." Mia smiled and turned off the light. She'd been right 6 months ago, standing in that auditorium. Her violin had been enough.